First passage is 1 John 3:20, which reads right here, quote, "For whenever our heart condemns us, God is greater than our heart." Why? Because he knows everything. All right, very simple, to the point. John is trying to let us know that God is all-knowing. And I don't know of a single Christian, Unitarian, or Trinitarian who would argue otherwise. God knows everything. He doesn't lack in any amount of understanding. So that's an easy one to establish. God knows everything. So let's just keep going. In John 16, starting in verse 30, we have a statement from John that could be read a few different ways. So let me read the verse and then I'll explain. John says, "Now we know that you know all things. Now we know that you know all things and do not need anyone to question you. This is why we believe that you came from God." And so this is Yeshua having this discussion with his disciples. And he's talking about using parables and figurative speech and things like that. If you go back and read the passage in John 16 to get the context, Yeshua even says, I've spoken to you in figures of speech, but the hour is going to come when I'll no longer speak to you in figures of speech, but I'll tell you plainly about my Father. And it's within that context that he said that the disciples respond to him in verse 30. Now we know that you know all things and do not need anyone to question you, right? So interestingly, if we were simply to say that according to what the disciples say, Yeshua knows everything, well, then this would equate him with God who already knows all things, that every good Jew would agree with that God knows all things. But those of us who are Trinitarians and realize that Yeshua is 100% God as well as 100% man would probably not push the point that Yeshua knows everything as a human. But aside from that, let's continue down this idea that Jesus as God knows all things. Let's look at another passage in the same book, just a few chapters later. In John 21:17, Yeshua, this is the resurrected Yeshua now, so this is a little different. In John 16, it's his pre-resurrection body. So perhaps we could make a case that Jesus, the 100% human pre-resurrection, knows all things, but it's probably limited from a human perspective. But as God, he knows all things. Yeah, that part of his nature is all-knowing. But the human part of him has knowledge limitation, just like all of us do. But notice in John 21, it's slightly different. It's a different Yeshua. From a physical perspective, he's post-resurrection. His body has changed. How much knowledge does he have now? We could pose the question. Let's look at the dialogue here. He and Peter are having this discussion.